I got some of those. I got some Altair, MITS boards. Do any particular mini-computers that really influenced you? I think I've read that there was a PDP that the most influenced you, but just take it from now.
We had a Nova 2 Data General in the office that we sold timeshare on. I think that was how we got into building a little terminal. And this kind of predates the Altair a little bit, but as a matter of fact, the front panel on the Altair essentially models every switch that was on the Nova 2, and that's because I had that machine to kind of look at. So, and somebody else had kind of gone through all that. And that's one of those things about standing on the shoulder of you giants. That's kind of true of technology in general. I mean, if you have to redecide what switches you need and all that, you can, but these guys already figured out. So we just kind of use it, which is pretty much standard of any front panel machine at that time when you had a front panel controller. If you were going to build a machine today that you wanted to allow front panel control to, it would look just like an Altair as far as or a Nova 2 or a PDP 10 or any of those, that had or PDP 11. They had front panel controls. There's certain things you need a way to get address in, a way to get data in, a way to single step it, all that kind of stuff. Reset it, look at output.
This is a question I kind of wanted to ask you early on. I'm jumping around. That's the way my mind works. So, what was kind of the series of products MITS had? You had your radio, your remote control devices. Then you went to calculators. So you have the Comp 1, right? Or the how many different?
We had the 816 calculator. The very first product we made was that was in Popular Electronics. Was an optical communicator. It was a laser communicator, except it used LEDs. It was infrared diodes. They weren't really lasers. We had lenses that we made ourselves that were injection molded ourselves, and we sold that as a kit. It had a range of 500 or 1,000 feet. It was actually a pretty good little product. We sold hundreds of them, which for the size, it was only two working out of a garage. But that was probably the first product that we did was that system there. And
how many different calculator models did you make?
I think we only had one that was in the magazine. We may have had another one that was in the magazine. We made the 816A and B. We made the 1440, which had square root. We made a machine that was 14 digits but had square root. Square root of memory. We made we had a scientific machine, a handheld scientific machine. I think we made 2 or 3 of those. We had several different handheld scientific machines. We made a scientific metric converter.
I know you produced an oscilloscope too, didn't you?
Well, that was that logic analyzer I was talking about.
Okay, just another name for it.
And we had function generators. We had a whole bunch of different products we made over the years.
And as far as the Altair, you had the original 8800, 8800A, B, the 6800, and then you had your turnkey models. And then, of course, you had a terminal and a printer and a couple different disk drives.
Yeah, when I left MITS, we had something like 40 different peripherals that went with that you could buy for the Altairs, and like probably 2 or 3 different memory variants, but input/output cards, parallel cards, serial cards, printer controllers, A to D converters, D to A converters, relay cards.
That's right. You had a whole bunch of different kind of cards.
And then we had floppy disk controllers, we had hard disk controllers, had tape, audio tape. I think we actually had a controller for big tape drives that was made for somebody. I don't know if they were marketed very much, but 9-track, the commercial tape stuff. There was something 40-something, I think, different cards that MITS was making at the time we put off, or when I left. You do color graphics on MITS. We had
I have a Dazzler.
Huh?
I have a Dazzler
do you?
card, yeah.
We had a machine that I don't know what they ever did with it. Was a self-contained. One was a 40-bit, one was a 40-digit, one was a 64-digit display. Sort of an Apple before the Apple. As a matter of fact, the first Apple. It's a little bit like when I was in college. There's a textbook in differential equations, and I remember a line that came out of it and said that the reader will find that Laplace transforms, like many things, were being used by Euler when Laplace was minus 15 years old. And the idea being that, just other people end up with credit. Well, that Apple kind of concept, the guys that probably did more to that than anybody else was a company called Processor Tech.
Right.
It was an Altair-based machine, but they had, it was, Altair bus, but they incorporated the keyboard and the display control all in one box. But it was still Altair bus. You plug everything into the Altair bus. That's another one of the sore points that people changed the name of the bus.
Yeah, I've read that.
And they did that to nobody ever wanted to steal the name. They didn't want to. They hated to give us credit every time they said they built a machine. Emphasized they wanted to say they had an Altair bus machine, and so that's what they did. They got together and all agreed to do that. And we should have copyrighted the bus or patented it. We never did any of that. If we had it, we could have stopped that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, theirs was an Altair-based bus machine, but it was an Apple before the Apple, and it was a good machine. Those were good competitors. And matter of fact, of the companies that I think about, you were talking about early machines. The company that I think about more than any other at the time was Processor Tech for a couple of reasons. Number one, they were good competition. They were building good products. They were mostly add-on products. They were the first people that built add-on products for the Altair that I thought were any quality. A lot of junk stuff being built, tons of junk stuff being built. But those guys built good quality stuff, and not only that, they did some stuff like they came out with a Terminator card that lowered the noise for the Altair. And they were not just competitors; they were actually contributing to personal computing, and that made them sort of unique. And then that Soul machine they made which was an Apple before the Apple.
I have one.
Yeah, that was a good machine. It was a good design. And those guys did good work. And the funny thing, and every time I've ever been interviewed any depth by anybody, I made that comment. And the only story that's ever told about MITS and Processor Tech was the first computer convention that was ever heard. Personal computer. It was the Altair convention. It was done in Albuquerque. It was Dave Bennell's idea. I said, Dave, this is crazy. We're not going to have people come all the way to Albuquerque to go to this convention.
But they did, huh?
They did tons of them. He was absolutely right. But it was his idea. He was director of marketing at our advertising at MITS. And Processor Tech showed up, and they had a suite up on the 9th floor of this Airport Marina hotel that we were in. And they had a sign down in the lobby that said Processor Tech up there. And he tore up their sign or something. Dave Bennell did this, or made them take their sign down because we were in the whole hotel. I was credited without anything to do with it. And we created more flat to hurt us, and it was just ignoring the thing. And those
I've read that. I've read about that.
And those were good competitors, but it just set Dave off.
Well, I'll be printing what you're saying here. So.
I mean, David worked real hard, and it made him mad. Those guys were in there taking, we're going to get some benefit out of what he had done. But anyway, that's the only story that's ever printed is that story.
Yep,
and all the stuff I've ever said good about those guys that ever got printed. Those guys did some great stuff. They identified some of the problems in the Altair. They had some fixes for them. They produced the products they made, the memory cards that they made were good memory cards. They worked good. They were competitively priced. It's hard to say anything bad about it. I mean to get off on that, but that's all. People, the stuff that sells though. If you're writing articles or magazines or
the bad stuff,
yeah.
The dirt, huh?
Yeah.
I'm not trying. For me, it's just interesting just to talk to you and hear what you have to say about it all. And I know I'm asking a lot of stuff that's other. As I'm trying to constantly sitting here trying to think of something to ask you that's totally different too, because a lot of people read my little magazine or have also read some of the books out there, and because the basic story everyone's heard. Not everyone, of course, but most people's heard it. I know one silly question I was going to ask you. What kind of computer do you have now? Is that something you prefer now, or do you not even really mess with them too much, other than just at work, or so kind of a thirst for that, or?
All the machines I have are PC-based machines. We've got at the house. I've got a DX4, 100 meg DX4. I've got a 33 meg DX2. I've got a Versa, NEC Versa Portable 33, and I've got a Z-Lite. It's a 46, one of the little new black and white. I really like it.
You still like? I read some. You like your gadgets too. So I guess that hasn't changed.
That's true. Isn't that true of everybody that likes computers, though? I mean,
yeah, sure.
Right. I made a comment at the show, which got some publicity. I haven't heard much recently, but it was a kind of a takeoff. I don't even know when Carter ran for election. He talked about how he lusted after women or something like that.
Uh-huh.
But all of us that were in computers early on, it's a different group than now. People use computers now. For the most of the computers are sold. People use it because they need them for business. But all the people that were there originally, all the original Altair owners, I'm talking about the first probably 5,000 or 10,000 Altair users, we lusted after computers. That was better than sex. I mean, it was, to have your own computer was really something exciting.
Right.
And
I can tell you though, from experience now, after working at CompUSA, the majority of people buying computers don't even know why they're buying them at this point in time. They just think they need to have one.
Yeah.
You should have a computer. And that's not necessarily the right reason to be buying it, but that's what's going on in 1995. That's what's happening. I'd say half the people I talk to on my job, and I'll say, well, what computer should I buy? And the first thing I ask them, okay, I want you to think about why you're why are you buying one, and what do you want to do with it? You should base, what you're going to buy around these things.
Yeah.
And well, I want to write letters, and that's the biggest thing. Write letters and play games and do home finances with Quicken or something. So and have.
Well, that's kind of, I get the sort of the same impression without talking. My model is, my database is a lot more limited than yours about that. But it's a different, I'm just going to put my coat on for the,
oh, okay.
Here.
I know if you're having to go right now, or we won't try not to take too much time either.
Oh, that's no problem. It's a different group of people than the people there. The people that were buying machines, I mean, they wanted the machine. They lusted after them. And to a large extent, they didn't know what they were going to do with them, in the sense that it wasn't so much they had a particular application, but it wasn't like, it was a different kind of thing than what you're talking about. I mean, these are people just have been told they ought to have a computer. These are people that they use computers professionally, most of them. Mm-hmm. And
right, and they enjoy what they're doing at work, and they just wish they could go home and have something to fool around with too. What do you still own now? Do you have one of everything you invented, or you marketed, or
no?
No. You have some particular favorites? I think you do have some Altairs. So there's
two Altairs in here, and that's the only two Altairs I have. Matter of fact, those
I see them. Oh, okay.
Both of those are brand new Altairs.
Really?
They've never been used.
You never switched them on?
I've switched them on. That's about it. As a matter of fact, I've brought the disc back, and they're still wrapped.
The top one's a B, isn't it?
There's a B in there and an A both.
Oh yeah, they certainly look brand new too. Those are nice.
They were wrapped up until recently. We had somebody came in and wanted photographs. So this was a Japanese group came in.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll get a photograph of it too.
Normally this place isn't all that neat, but it's not as messy as it is right here. We just get stuff piled in here. In the process of we're redoing the walls.
Have you ever been surprised are you a celebrity at all? Every so often you go, hey, aren't you Ed Roberts? No, never?
No, nobody knows who I am. There are probably 5 people in town that know who I am, or that I've ever done anything, in terms of, people, anybody that knows who I am in town, they know because I'm a doctor here in town. That there's some notoriety associated with that in a small town, but
right.
But as far as knowing anything about me in terms of my background, it's interesting. I have never.
They'll probably build a big monument of you after you die, though, right? In Albuquerque or Silicon Valley or something.
You think that's pretty funny too? You're right. Yeah, there's no monuments to him, is there? No monuments to him. It is kind of funny though that nobody here has any idea at all. And I run into it all the time. I went to a this has been also been several years ago. We were developing I had a 5-year non-compete agreement with Pertec, so I couldn't do anything with computers for the first 5 years after I came back here. And then I started a company. Matter of fact, I sold the company when I started
I wanted to ask you
medical
about
school on. There was it was some software that I'd written, farm software, and I sold that when I started medical school. But lost my train of thought on that now.
So you're going to sell it to someone, or?
We started to do some hardware, or I started doing some hardware design and set up this. Again, this has been maybe 8 or 9 years ago, but it was a lot closer to the time that Altair people, you can still find somebody that heard of an Altair then. And I went to the Radio Shack in Macon, and they had a Radio Shack, which I think they'd kind of slowed down, but they did nothing but computers. I think most of those kind of
got
away.
I think so. Yeah.
I know the one in Macon finally.
And now I understand AST. Either they bought AST or the other way around or something. They have ASTs in Radio Shacks now, so I don't.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I went in their store there, and they were selling a machine at the time, a TRS-80, I think, or whatever was a Z80-based processor. Well, I was doing it
TRS-80, right?
With the NSC-800, which is a national version of a Z80. It was a CMOS real low power machine. This design that we did, that's what we used. And there was no good manuals on the, no good manuals on the assembler for that. And they had made an assembler language or assembler manual for the TRS-80, so I went and asked the guy for the manual. And it was a salesman. And this is one of the things you may get a kick is being a salesman. But I was quoted a couple times on that. My model for computer salesman at stores is it's from ignorance to arrogance in about 3 months. And this guy told me, he said, first of all, that I didn't need an assembler. And second of all, he could tell by looking at me that I wasn't smart enough to use an assembler if I had. And those aren't his exact words, but it's pretty clear. He could tell talking to me that I wouldn't be able to handle it. So I thanked him and left.
Have you ever tried to tell someone actually I invented the personal computer, and they're like, oh yeah.
I did that in the
Sure you did.
I did in the CompUSA one time. I figured this guy kept BSing. This is one of these deals. I went in there and I asked the guy what size memory it was, or something like that, or what size disk it had, or something. I guess it was how much memory, and I said, I think he told us 4 megabytes or something. I said, what would it cost to take it to 8 megs? And he explained to me very patiently that we should call it megabytes, we didn't say megs. And I said, okay. And
really?
He did that to me about 3 or 4 times, different things I would say. He didn't like the terms that I used. And I finally said, hey, I'm the guy that invented the personal computer. And he patted me on the head and said, yeah, all right. So I said, okay.
I guess we've covered about everything. Anything else? If you were me, what would you ask you? Anything I kind of glazed over or missed? Or there's other things that maybe you wish people would print about you. You never seem to get asked, or...
Well, someday I would hope, and probably nobody will ever do it, is the original Altair had some flaws in it, but the design itself was really pretty elegant. And the fact that everybody kind of misses that. The thing that I find, there's several things that I find frustrating, not so much about people not knowing who I am, but the comment that's made about the original Altair isn't really a personal computer. Of course, that's come from Apple. They tried to denigrate it, and their basis for saying that is the fact that it's had all those front panel switches, so it couldn't be used very easy. And they missed the whole point. I mean, those front panel switches, you never had to touch one. If you put a ROM in there and hit the power on switch, it was up and running.
Right.
And of course, I think people probably started that knew that was true, but it makes a good story to sound like they were primitive because they had all those switches on them, as opposed to it was the exact opposite. They were very sophisticated machines, even by standards today. I mean, it allowed you a way. You could do everything theoretically on one of these. You could do it on a machine now, except you didn't need anything else. It was all self-contained in those front panel switches.
Well, also, I mean, Apple, like when they started thinking about the Apple II, Apple I is a hobbyist little board. The Apple II, we're going to sell a computer. It's a consumer computer, people computer. Novice person's computer. And that's not what the Altair was not for a novice. It was for a computer, electronic hobbyist. It's for people who. It was a very powerful machine for someone who knew how to do something with it. Of course, someone who off the street, doesn't know anything about electronics, they couldn't do anything with it. But so there's a different market.
That was probably true. The original market for the personal computer, for the Altair, was sort of an aficionado market, in the sense that it was people that had some expertise in computers, or at least in electronics. But I'll tell you, it was about 3 or 4 days after the Altair article appeared that we changed our model, our model changed for what the typical customer was going to be. And it is true that probably the initial few thousand machines, a couple thousand Altairs were sent to predominantly people that were, the insider kind of folks. The vast majority of the Altairs that were shipped were ultimately shipped to non-expert users. And we realized that real early in the game with the phone calls we get. I think I told you on the phone about the guy, the very first customer we sold. I was talking to somebody about that.
I think you did. Please say it again.
Was a dentist in Chicago who wanted to use an Altair to control a model railroad layout. This is apparently a massive model with some club there. And that was the thing that was a real eye-opener to us, is that we were finding people with applications and ideas that were entirely, that we'd never imagined. Mm-hmm. And one of the comments I used to think about then, and I'm a little disappointed that it hadn't happened, but the old thing about if you gave an infinite number of monkeys a infinite number of typewriters, that one of them would write King Lear. Have you ever heard that?
No, maybe.
But you can show mathematically that if you had an infinite number of monkeys and an infinite number of
it'd have to happen sooner.
One of them's going to come up with King Lear, right?
Right.
Okay. My model always, the thing was always intrigued me. When I was at Oklahoma State, it was a real forward-looking school, which sounds kind of funny. Oklahoma State's not one of you think about being a major engineering thing, but the engineering school, we have the double E school. I was there from 65 to 68 when I finished up and got my degree in double E there. They had an IBM 1620 that was an open lab. I mean, literally, there was nobody that monitored the lab. This was, at the time, when computers, this was a big machine, physically a big machine, a lot of money invested in it.
Right.
It was open to engineering students. We go down there, you just put your name on the schedule. There was a book that was kept in there, and you signed it for the time you wanted. You could sign up 30-minute blocks at a time, and you owned the machine for that 30 minutes.
Man, so
it was fantastic. That had probably more impact on my feeling later on about computers than anything
Wouldn't that be
else.
great if you could do that all the time?
Yeah. It was a real positive, forward-looking thing, because computers had always been sort of meccas up to that point. There were only the high priests were allowed in the same room even with a computer, and you certainly didn't let any user go. This thing had the instructions written on the side how you power the thing up from zero, and this is a lot more complicated now than a modern PC. It's a lot more complicated from the Altair for that matter. But you could bring the system up from zero, and everything, all the I/O was on paper card or punch card. But
it had a Fortran or
everything we did was
COBOL or
Fortran,
something.
Fortran 4, PDQ, Fortran PDQ, and stuff. All the sort of stuff I wrote programs in Fortran.
Hey.
But there's several things like that. One of that is the original Altair design was really pretty elegant in terms of what it did. And if it had been done any way differently than what it was, personal computers the development would have been much slower, because nobody really came up with anything new for probably 2 or 3 years after that, and by that time after the original Altair design, and that was after everybody had the experience of learning where the market was and all that. I mean, everything we did, all the stupid things we did, which we did plenty, but there was no rules at the time. There was no database. You couldn't look at it, see what CompUSA does and what markets well for and what doesn't market. There was nothing, no basis.
Right.
Everything you did was a guess.
Did you ever get any Minicomputer companies buying Altairs just to check them out and stuff that you know of?
Kind of a funny thing. This is another one of these kind of side stories, and this would have again been something like 75 or 70.
Let me stop it for a second. Okay.
This would have been something like 75 or 70. It was before we moved to our new building, because I remember we went over to the MITS executive lunchroom when we met with the guys from IBM, which was a Dairy Queen behind my back office. Kind of across the alley was Dairy Queen. That's what we called our executive lunchroom. And we had at that time we had maybe 100 employees at MITS. I mean, it wasn't a garage. MITS hadn't been a garage operation for a long time when the Altair came out. But it was still pretty small. But IBM showed up that day. Showed up one day with several different lawyers, and the basic reason they were there was that they wanted to use us to be a witness. They were being sued, I believe, by Memorex or somebody for monopolistic practices to keep other people out of the computer business. And what they had done is they generated the data, and we at that time, this is MITS now, was increasing the supply of computers at the rate of 1% a month. We were increasing the number of computers in the world at the rate of 1% a month. Just MITS by ourselves. Right. That's worldwide. 1% a month. We were increasing the number of computers in the world at the rate of 1% a month. Which, if you think about that number,
it's very significant.
It's a few thousand
Out
computers.
of a couple billion people in the world, so.
And that was only a few thousand machines, but that gives you an idea how many machines there were at that time. And we were indeed making a lot more computers than IBM was making. Of course, one of their main systems you could have bought and sold MITS 20 times over for, but anyway, that wasn't the point. They wanted to use us in court to show that they were not monopolistic, and here was a company that was actually producing more computers than they were and all that. And then I'm sure they were going to spend too much time about the size of the computers and the market and all that. But the interesting thing that came out of it, IBM at the time had something like 30 engineers or technicians internally in IBM working on our machines. I was the only double E at MITS at the time. And they had more people looking at what we were doing than we had doing. I mean, all the technicians, including the technicians in repair, we probably didn't have 15 people in. And I remember that was kind of I don't know how I got off on that, but that was kind of an interesting, in terms of what other people were doing. I know that IBM at least was in it to that extent. And part of it was for the court case, part of it was just looking at what was going on.
Well, do you ever remember anybody who just really who bought an Altair that you know of, who like just, wow, this person bought an Altair, bought a computer from us, or the most impressive person who bought a computer that you know of, or this is one of those silly questions, but it makes good reading.
The guy that did the special effects for Star Wars, I believe for Star Wars, bought some computers, but it came out there from MITS and bought some, and they were using them. That was some of the first stuff that was being done with computer animations, where they kept using the computer to keep track.
Uh-huh.
I met that guy, I don't remember what his name was. There was a, I can't think of
That's
that.
real interesting.
I still hear about him. He's a well-known jazz musician who lives in New York. I've seen his name through. It's not Tony Bennett, but somebody of that ilk that bought some. I know there was a computer bought some of the stuff from this. We stole stuff to the Secret Service, to the FBI, though. CIA, all kinds of
Well,
people.
pretty much they could take the place of a mini-computer system easily. Personal
It took the industry-
mini-computer.
It took the industry a long time to realize that microprocessors, people went through the same way. There were supercomputers, there were computers, then there were mini-computers, and there were microcomputers. And everybody assumed that when you said microcomputer, you were talking that was a performance thing. Microcomputer, and it's still microcomputer is really a technology, and that was one of the big arguments I had at the time. A microcomputer didn't say a thing about its performance, and indeed now I think the supercomputers are basically microcomputers now. I mean, parallel.
The Pentiums and the Power PCs.
But I think they miss the point that these microprocessors were actually, power-wise, were approaching the power of the mini machines, even with the 8080.
Okay.
And I'm sure by the time you got to the 386, you exceeded the power of most of the mini machines around at that time. Talking about, say, in the mid-70s.
Right.
And some of those.
I guess the
mini-machines
only thing a mini-computer had over the Altair at the time was you had some 16-bit mini-computers. That's really was about it. In order to make it somewhat more substantial and faster and stuff, but functionality, no real big difference. And then I guess it was, well, with IBM in '81, they of course weren't the first computer of 16-bit, but they were the biggest one in any case. Yeah, right now you have, with a Pentium and a Power PC computer, for the most part you have the equivalent of a supercomputer on your desk. Something that cost millions of dollars with a Cray 1 just, 15 years ago or something. And you wonder why people, again, like customers, someone comes in, drops $3,000 on a Pentium 90 just to play games with, and so you're just like, why don't you just go buy a Sega or something? Imagine even game systems, how sophisticated they are now, compared,
Oh, yeah, some of those game programs, some of the most sophisticated stuff out, I think, is probably games.
Right. Well, supposedly Nintendo and Sega are coming out with 64-bit systems now, this fall or something. This is what I read. I don't know if this will ever be true, but supposedly for the first time in history, game systems will start being ahead of personal computers.
In terms of sophistication.
I read that somewhere. I don't know if that's going to be. But then again, a game system is not not a general purpose computer, though. It's only a special purpose. It can only is limited. So there's a big difference there.
The game designers have the advantage over what people are doing right now because they don't have to worry about any kind of processor being compatible or anything like that. So you take the latest technology, even if it's not compatible with Apple or the PC, and just go for it because everything's going to be custom anyway. You're not going to try to interface with anybody else.
Yeah.
It gives you kind of an advantage that nobody else has. I made a prediction actually, which everybody thought was kind of a joke at the time we met with IBM, and that was the first computer would destroy IBM.
And almost did, huh?
Yeah. And
somehow they turned it around. But.
Yeah, then it came out with the PC, and one of the guys remembered that I made that prediction and said, "See, you were wrong. They'd come out with the PC, and they made a pretty good hit with the PC." And it looked like they were about to go belly up there with that whole business. Mm-hmm. And I guess they're doing pretty good now, aren't they? I haven't really seen.
Yeah, somehow they totally turned it around because one of the hottest products is the ThinkPads. Now their desktop computers, I think, are doing respectably, but they're not compact. I think Packard Bell are the biggest sellers. But yeah, their ThinkPads are super popular.
There's nothing gee whiz about their desk machines, is there? I mean, they're nothing.
Not that I've seen. In my personal opinion, I still think Apple is the biggest innovator out there. And I'm no engineer or anything, but it seems like Apple still consistently seems to come up with the original ideas and the new interesting things, and everybody else copies them.
Dave Bonnell, who keeps up, he stayed in, and he's one of the guys that I still talk to Dave fairly regularly. Dave says that the thing that's kind of interesting to him is that if he goes to a meeting with PCs and people that are Apple users, he says the Apple users look a lot more like the early MITS customers than the PC users. He said the PC users are more oriented toward this is a machine to do work with. And the Apple users, he said you still see the same enthusiasm.
Are more passionate, yeah. I think it's true.
They love their computers, whereas that's a different kind of mentality than what you see with a PC.
And maybe that's why my first love, I guess, was my first computer was a Commodore 64. Just a little toy, basically all it was for me. My first real computer that I ever did anything with was a Macintosh, and I got turned on to Macintoshes when they first, the little ones. And I bet this is like 1986, so at that time, DOS computers were, for someone like me who was totally knew nothing about computers, they were terrible. Here's this neat little computer that's so easy, and then here's this. So it's like, well, definitely I'm going to go for this one. And I've always been real passionate about it. And actually, I have a Lisa computer. Remember those? The kind of predecessor to the Mac, and that kind of generated all my interest in history. It first started off as the history of Apple and Lisa and Macs and stuff, and it's just built into. I just find all of it.
Lisa was kind of a dead end, wasn't it? It just kind of went.
The Lisa, yeah.
I don't think I ever saw one.
It was just way too expensive. It was $10,000 for the first one in 1983, and they tried to, say it was like a workstation. They were trying to position it the way workstations were, but, the software that came for it was good software, spreadsheets and work, but it was business software, not design software, something you'd use workstations for. And there's no, why spend $10,000 on that when you can drop $3 on an IBM PC, the business computer, and, so it just. But it was a learning experience, I think, for them, because with the Mac, But I think you're absolutely right. Mac people are still very enthusiastic. I guess because it's a minority or something.
Yeah, they're still kind of viewed as the little guys. Even that turned out a pretty good sized operation.
And maybe back in your day, or back in with the Altair days, your hobbyists, your electronics guys, you're kind of a minority too, I guess. A specialty group. People that had to stick together because everyone else thinks you're kind of weird or strange or something, so you kind of bond together. Just like everyone thinks, Mac people, why the heck would you use that, when everyone else is IBM compatible.
The problem with the Macs now, they're still slow, aren't they? Relatively slow compared to the PCs. I'm talking about something I know nothing at all about. Okay.
Well, actually, I think generally speaking, with applications, I think so a little bit, but like the PowerPC. I think ultimately it will be faster. It's just that there's not as much, just like when the Mac originally came out, there's not enough native software for it yet. But once that starts happening, it's going to blaze past. I just read something recently that the new 100 megahertz PowerPC totally burns the 100 megahertz Pentium like 30% faster or something in native applications. So I think
that's been one of the problems too with like the 386 and 486. Most of that software is written for 286 software.
Right.
So it's not native, and that's even true of the Pentium. It's not native.
But I think the biggest thing holding back Intel technology is DOS, and then even Windows. They're terrible, horrible. I try to tell customers that it's basically as easy as a Macintosh, but anytime you have any kind of problem, you have to dig all in there to figure stuff out. There's no comparison between. My document's not printing. On a Macintosh, it's real easy to decipher what's going on, what's wrong. Try to do it in Windows, it's just terrible. You have to go through all.
Well, it's too flexible. You're paying for that flexibility with complexity. You can use anybody's printer.
Yeah.
You can use anybody's application software on anybody's different hardware and all that. And it turns out when you're with anybody's different BIOS, and it just doesn't all. Sometimes it just doesn't always work together. I mean, I see that same kind of thing even with the stuff that I'm doing. It'll lock up. Most of that power, the only time I ever run into a place where the power makes much difference is on CAD applications. I'm still doing some design work and graphic stuff. You can bog the machine down with some of the graphic stuff. But if you're talking about doing word processors,
no, you can do any.
An 8080, was fast enough for most of that.
Yeah, matter of fact, it's faster in some cases. Just running, WordStar on a basic Z80 or 8080 computer. I mean, it comes right up, no problem with CPM. It's very efficient.
I need to put together a system. I still got in a warehouse here. We came with a system that was a stack. One of the applications which we didn't do very good with marketing. We ran out of money to do it, but this was one of the big projects I had that I'm just closed the company down a couple or 3 years ago. But the concept was this: a conventional machine, you modify the software to meet your application, but you don't really modify the hardware that much. What this thing was is a bunch of stack modules. You get a processor module, and you get a A to D module. If you want to control your house, you get this module. You get a whole bunch of modules. You just stack them together, and they were designed to be instantly compatible. Well, one of the things we played around with to make the thing, this software that you could do with it was like we bought a version of WordStar that was designed to run on CPM, the old CPM WordStar. We made extensive use of this system with RAM disk and ROM disk. So we had floppies, but the systems were designed where if there was a power fail, it would come back up and keep running and all that. So we tried to avoid any kind of mechanical memory system because of reliability problems.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, we had WordStar on the thing. It's the first time I ever used WordStar running out of ROM. Well, first of all, when you turn the machine on, the machine looked like that. And it's instant. It goes through all the first checks and all that because everything's working out of ROM. You don't go to all the disk requests you make are made to RAM disk or ROM disk.
Okay, so yeah, it's like instantaneous.
And when you use WordStar, it was much faster than the fastest PC we had for doing word processing. Much faster.
Yeah, the whole concept with your game systems, everything's on ROM. I don't understand why the concept of using cartridges for personal computers, why that didn't stick around longer. It makes, it's something that if you're going to upgrade it, you have to buy new software anyway. Well, you'd have to just buy another one. But yeah, ROM software seems to be a great idea. I don't know why.
It's dirt cheap too.
I guess
ROM,
with
big ROMs are real
even
cheap.
CDs. I guess CDs can hold a lot more, but yeah, with a piece of ROM software, it's almost instantaneous when you turn on the computer.
Yeah.
I don't know why they didn't stick with that more. I guess it just wasn't professional or something, or what.
One of the things you think about, everybody pushes machine, getting faster and faster process speeds and get to 90 megahertz and 100 megahertz. And then you look at the clock, you got to get 15 milliseconds or 10 milliseconds random access on the disk, and your transfer rate on the disk maybe it's 10 megahertz if it hits 10 megahertz. And you look at the system basically their disk, that's what controls the speed. If you had an infinitely fast processor, a lot of that stuff is still going to be business applications, especially where you're doing a lot of back and forth.
Right.
But I would enjoy doing what you're doing for a while. I think it'd be interesting to kind of keep up with what's the hot stuff out there. I still read a lot of the magazines. You kind of look through, like PC World and Byte and those kind of things to kind of keep up. But I don't.
It's kind of fun. It gets I like people, and I like talking to people, and I think my biggest skill is teaching. But even that, after you've taught, you give the same spiel over and over and over. It gets a little old, yeah. But I enjoy it overall. This is kind of a transitional job, really. I don't. It's a good company though. CompUSA is a very good company.
Well, they're growing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think they're going to establish themselves as the big Kmart of computers or whatever here. So yeah, I may end up staying with them and.
They're still. I still buy stuff from them. Actually, America Online and CompuServe, if you look through the classified, a lot of things you get some really good deals and stuff.
That's right. Yeah. That's what I do.
But if you're talking about stuff that you got to buy, they're still very competitive with most of the mail order. One in Atlanta.
Yeah.
I can look around and I might be able to beat the prices on.
Well, they'll match, They'll match anything. Sure, you bring it in and say, here it is, right here, mail order. They'll match it with the shipping price, though.
Yeah.
But still, but the prices generally are as cheap as mail order on most things.
Yeah, it's not. It's certainly not a big deal difference. The biggest problem in Georgia is the tax. You had the 5 or 6% tax, so you got a kind of built-in discount by ordering mail order.
Right.
Which more than covers the freight.
I usually stick with mail order myself. Unless it's there, and that's the convenience of at least be able to buy it, go home with it, and you have it. But otherwise, to get the best price, I'm not in a hurry. I usually mail order everything.
I bought a good bit of CD software recently off of CompuServe or off American Online. Really good prices. Like in Carta, it's like $32. I think I paid for the 95 in Carta on the CD.
Really?
Still sealed. It's that OEM stuff. I don't know. This is a different thing than you run into. But if you're an OEM, like with the last little company I had, we were buying software. Like we paid $5 a copy for WordStar. In which they were selling that CPM WordStar at the time for like $195 or something like that. I think the retail may have been $295, but nobody ever sold it for that high. It was that order of magnitude. We're talking about 8 or 9 years ago. But we buy $5 a copy, and they just give us a block of numbers. You know, like you'd have serial number 20,000 to 20,500 or whatever the quantity we were buying, and we had to manufacture all the discs or the, all that kind of stuff. But that's what this software is. I've noticed all the stuff that I've got, like those CDs, it says on the back, it'll be some comment if you look, it's for sale with equipment or something. So somebody bought it OEM, as an original equipment manufacturer, and they've gotten that software, and that's why they're selling it so cheap.
Right, and then they sell it online, make some extra money off.
Yeah, I was concerned initially. I was a little bit gun shy with it. It might be stolen software or something with the serial numbers weren't any good on it, or you couldn't get it upgraded or something. But all the stuff that I've gotten, then that's.
What was the name of the stackables? Did you have what was the company name and the name of the product? The ones with the stackable components.
Data blocks.
Data blocks.
Is the name of the company. Yeah. We call it the Altair 2.
Yeah. Do you have any like product information?
I don't have any. I've got a warehouse full of stuff on that kind of stuff that I.
If you just ever get a chance, I really enjoy looking through it.
I've got a pile of. I've got some of the hardware I need to do something with. Parts and stuff that I need to do something with. I need to really, but I've kept saying we ended up with a bunch of systems left over. I was going to put together a bunch of WordStar word processors just to use around here. Of course, word processors got so cheap anyway. I guess you can buy them for a couple of $300.
Yeah, for a dedicated word processor. Yeah, so, nice ones too. With like, what's that one by somebody? It's totally graphical interface, everything. It's almost like using a little Macintosh or Windows or something. Just
the brother?
No, Smith Corona.
Yeah.
Or somebody, but like $299 for a whole little and then of course they do spreadsheets, so you can do that too. Spreadsheet word processor computer. I'll shut this off.